Your daughter is alive. She is suffering. The raven's sharp cry, its voice distorted by an almost human urgency, pierced the oppressive silence of the marble mansion. Billionaire Arthur, petrified, felt the air drain from his lungs, the ground spin beneath his feet. His hands, once steady, trembled as he watched the black bird stare at the smiling portrait of his little daughter, Luna, whom he believed he had lost forever. And the truth Corvus was about to reveal about her whereabouts would change everything he thought he knew about the woman sleeping beside him. Arthur staggered, his legs failing under the weight of the revelation. "Corvus, what did you say?" he whispered, his voice hoarse, almost inaudible, as if he feared that repeating those words would make them vanish into thin air. The raven, with its bright black eyes, flew from its perch and landed on Arthur's shoulder, gently pecking his ear, as if to ensure the message was understood in all its painful clarity. Luna, alive, suffering. Isabella. The bird repeated, the words fragmented, but the meaning now was crystal clear. A chill ran down Arthur's spine. Isabella, his new wife, the woman who had filled the void in his life after Luna's supposed tragedy. How could it be? Arthur's mind struggled to process the information. On one hand, the pain of Luna's loss had been so real, so overwhelming. On the other, Corvus's insistence, the raven's strange behavior lately, the nocturnal cries, the ruffled feathers whenever Isabella approached Luna's portrait, the fixed and disturbing stares at his wife. Arthur had attributed it all to the animal's peculiarity, to his own grief, making him see signs where there were none. But now it made a terrible sense. As Arthur tried to organize the whirlwind of thoughts, the master bedroom door opened softly. Isabella, with her impeccably styled blonde hair and a silk robe that glided over her body, appeared with an expression of forced concern. "Arthur, my love, what's happening? I heard a strange noise." Her eyes, before settling on Arthur, cast a quick, almost imperceptible glance at Corvus, who was still on the billionaire's shoulder, and at Luna's portrait. There was a flicker of something there, a tension Arthur, in his state of shock, barely noticed. He turned to Isabella, his face pale, his eyes wide. "Isabella?" he began, but the words seemed caught in his throat. She approached, her hand extended to touch his arm, but Arthur flinched slightly, an almost unconscious movement that did not escape her notice. "Are you all right, darling? You look like you've seen a ghost. Was it that noisy raven again?" "He really needs to be disciplined," she said, her voice sweet, but with a veiled hint of irritation directed at the bird. Corvus, as if understanding every nuance of Isabella's voice, let out a piercing cry, a sound that seemed like a warning, an accusation. He spread his wings, agitated, and flew to the coffee table, where he began frantically pecking at one of the flower vases, knocking it to the floor with a crash. The vase shattered into pieces, scattering soil and petals across the Persian rug. Isabella gave a small jump, her lips tightening into a thin line. "Look at that! What an uncontrollable animal! Arthur, you need to do something about him." Arthur, however, wasn't paying attention to the broken vase. His eyes were fixed on Isabella, trying to decipher the truth behind her facade of a concerned wife. Corvus's words echoed in his mind. Luna, suffering. Isabella. A wave of nausea hit him. Could it be possible? Could the woman he loved, who had sworn to care for him, be capable of such cruelty? The idea was monstrous, an abyss of betrayal that threatened to swallow him. He remembered how Isabella always changed the subject when he spoke of Luna, how she subtly encouraged him to move on, to leave the past behind. At the time, he had seen it as a gesture of affection, an attempt to ease his pain. Now it seemed something far more sinister. He took a step back, the distance between them widening not just physically, but emotionally. "Isabella," he repeated, this time more firmly, his voice laden with a chilling suspicion that made her smile falter. "What Corvus said about Luna, what do you know about it?" His eyes, once filled with grief and affection for her, were now like two icy slits, piercing Isabella's soul. Demanding an answer she was clearly unprepared to give. The mansion, once a sanctuary of luxury and false peace, now became a stage for the darkest truth, revealed by a raven and a broken heart. Isabella felt her blood run cold, but her mask of innocence was a second skin, forged in years of dissimulation. Her lips trembled slightly before recomposing into a forced smile, her eyes wide in a perfect imitation of shock. "Arthur, my love, what are you saying? Corvus is just an animal. He can't really speak. It's your grief, darling, that makes you hear things. Luna is gone. You know that. I've been by your side through every moment of your mourning, trying to give you solace." She extended her hand again, this time with more persistence, trying to touch his face, but Arthur recoiled, distrust etched into every line of his countenance. Corvus, from atop the coffee table, observed the scene with disturbing intelligence. He let out a hoarse caw, like a strident reminder of the truth, and pecked the air in Isabella's direction, his small pupils fixed on the woman. For Arthur, the raven's gesture was no longer mere animal behavior. It was a silent yet powerful accusation. "No, Isabella," Arthur said, his voice firmer now, laced with a pain that surpassed his own disbelief. "He said your name. He said Luna, alive, suffering, Isabella. It's not my grief. It's his voice, clear as day, and your behavior. The stares, the cries when you approach her portrait. It all makes sense now." He gestured to the broken vase, to the raven's ruffled feathers. "He's been trying to tell me something for weeks, and I, in my blindness, refused to see." Isabella took a step back, the color draining from her face. Her smile faltered, and a shadow of panic crossed her eyes, but she quickly replaced it with an expression of deep hurt. "How can you think such a thing, Arthur? After everything we've been through together, after I dedicated my life to you, to easing your sorrow. It's cruel, it's outrageous. This animal is driving you mad with its oddities. He's making things up. Or perhaps you're so desperate for hope that you're finding it in delusions." False tears began to well in her eyes, streaming down her cheeks, a perfectly staged spectacle of grief. Arthur felt a tightening in his chest. The image of Luna, the smiling girl in the portrait, clashed with the image of Isabella, the woman he loved and who now seemed a stranger. Doubt was a slow poison, corroding his soul. But Corvus's cry, the clarity of the words, the urgency in his gaze, that was real. It was palpable. He couldn't ignore it. "These aren't delusions, Isabella. It's an accusation, and I need to know the truth. Where is Luna? What have you done?" Arthur's voice, though still choked with emotion, carried an authority Isabella hadn't seen since Luna disappeared. He was no longer the broken, manipulable man. Hope, however painful, had ignited a flame of fury and determination in his eyes. He wouldn't allow her manipulation to blind him again. The connection with his daughter, whom he thought he had lost, was an unbreakable bond. And now, with Corvus's unexpected help, he was ready to fight for her, whatever the cost. The mansion, once a stage of lies, was about to witness the awakening of a father seeking justice, and the truth, however terrible, could no longer be silenced. Isabella took a step back, her hand clutching the silk robe against her chest, feeling the heat of panic rise in her throat. Her tears, once a controlled stream, now seemed to gush with more intensity, and her voice, once sweet, took on a tone of deep hurt. "Arthur, how can you be so cruel? I love you. I was here when no one else was. You're accusing me of something so heinous, so unthinkable." Luna was like a daughter to me. I loved her." She sobbed, bringing her hands to her face, her shoulders trembling in a convincing display of despair. Her eyes, however, peered through her fingers, searching for any sign of hesitation on Arthur's face, any trace of the man she manipulated, but Arthur didn't waver. The image of Luna, the innocent smile in the portrait, was an unbreakable shield against Isabella's manipulation. The pain in his chest was now a mix of renewed grief and a chilling fury, a determination he hadn't felt in years. He remembered every sleepless night, every tear shed for his daughter, and the idea that Isabella could have orchestrated it all was a poison that spurred him to act. "No, Isabella, no more. Your tears don't deceive me. Corvus doesn't lie. He has no reason to lie. And you always avoided talking about Luna. You always rushed me to forget her. I was a fool, blinded by my own grief and your supposed compassion." Corvus, as if sensing the strength of Arthur's conviction, flew from the broken vase and landed on the coffee table, flapping his wings once, a dry, decisive sound. He looked at Isabella, then at Arthur, and let out a low caw, almost a lament, which seemed to seal the truth of Arthur's words with undeniable gravity. Isabella let her hands fall, revealing a face contorted by anger and fear, her mask of grief crumbling completely. Her eyes, once tear-filled, now gleamed with contained fury and growing despair. "You're going to believe a bird, Arthur? A wild, noisy animal, instead of your own wife, after everything I've done for you? You're mad, completely mad." She took a step forward, her voice rising, but Arthur raised his hand, a stopping gesture that froze her in place. "Enough, Isabella," he said, his voice low, but laden with an authority she had never heard, a dark promise. "I don't know what you've done, but I will find out, and I will find Luna. Whatever the cost." He turned, walking towards the bedroom door, his steps firm and determined. His mind was already racing, planning every move. He needed answers, and he wouldn't get them there, trapped in that web of lies. Isabella watched him, real panic beginning to take over her features, chilling her blood. The fortune, the luxury, the life she had meticulously built, everything was about to crumble in an instant. "Arthur, wait. Where are you going? You can't just leave me like this. Think of what people will say. Think of your reputation." She tried to follow him, but he was already at the threshold of the door, without even looking back. "My reputation is the least of my worries now, Isabella," he replied, his voice echoing in the hallway with a cutting coldness. "My only concern is my daughter, and if you had any part in this, I promise you will face the consequences." With a final glance at Corvus, who watched him with an ancient wisdom and a gleam of triumph in his black eyes, Arthur left the room, closing the door behind him with a soft, yet final click. Isabella was left alone in the room, the silence filled only by Corvus's occasional caw and the sound of her own heart, beating wildly like a war drum. The charade was over. Arthur, the man she thought she had under her control, had awakened from his stupor of grief. The truth, propelled by a raven and a father's unbreakable love, was now in motion, an unstoppable force that threatened to destroy everything she had built on lies and betrayal. She needed to act, and fast. The hunt had begun, and Isabella knew she was in a race against time, not to hide the truth, but to save herself from imminent ruin. Isabella felt the ground beneath her feet crumble, the plan, so meticulously orchestrated, now dissolved like smoke before that insolent bird and Arthur's newly awakened fury. Her eyes swept the room, searching for an exit, a solution. The image of Luna, imprisoned on the remote farm, flashed in her mind. She knew she had little time. Arthur, with his vast influence and resources, wouldn't hesitate to move heaven and earth. What would she do? Flee. Try to silence Corvus. The latter option was tempting, but too risky now that Arthur was alert. She needed a plan, and fast, to divert attention, to buy time. Panic gave way to a cold, calculated determination. She picked up the phone, her fingers trembling slightly as she dialed a number. "I need you to move the girl," she whispered, her voice laden with urgency and a tone of command that brooked no questions. "Now, to a place where he'll never find her." As Isabella wove her new web of deceit, Arthur was already in his office, his mind buzzing. The pain of Luna's supposed loss had been a dense fog, but now the truth, however cruel, was like a lightning bolt awakening him. He sat at his large mahogany desk, his gaze fixed on Luna's portrait. Corvus, surprisingly, had flown silently to the office windowsill, watching Arthur with an almost human intensity. The billionaire picked up the phone, dialing the number of his head of security, a man of absolute trust. "I want you to mobilize all available resources," Arthur said, his voice firm, leaving no room for emotion. "I need information on all rural properties Isabella owns or has access to, especially the most isolated ones, and I want a team ready for anything." He hung up, feeling a pang of guilt for having been so blind, so manipulable. But there was no time for regrets. There was only Luna. He stood up, walking to the window, and Corvus hopped onto his shoulder. "You knew, didn't you, my friend?" Arthur whispered, stroking the raven's dark feathers. Corvus gently pecked his ear, and then, with an unexpected movement, flew to an old bookshelf, landing on a dusty volume Arthur rarely touched, a family photo album. The raven pecked the cover repeatedly, then looked at Arthur with its bright eyes. Arthur picked up the album, feeling a shiver. It was the album containing Luna's last photos before her disappearance, a treasure of painful memories he had kept away from Isabella. He opened it, and Corvus, with surprising agility, pointed with his beak to a specific photo. Luna, smiling, hugging a small dog in front of a rustic wooden fence. In the background, an almost illegible sign indicated the name of a farm. "Sunrise Farm," Arthur read aloud, his voice choked. He vaguely remembered Isabella mentioning the property, a distant family inheritance, but had always dismissed it as insignificant. The final piece of the puzzle seemed to fit. The isolated farm, Luna's image there, Corvus's insistence. A wave of hope and dread washed over him. Could Luna be there, in that place? He felt his heart pound in his chest. "Corvus, my friend, you are an angel," he said, his voice full of gratitude. He dialed again, this time for his lawyer. "I need a court order to access a property immediately. Sunrise Farm. It's urgent. My daughter might be there." Arthur's determination was unshakable, fueled by love and hope. He wouldn't rest until Luna was back in his arms, and the truth about Isabella would be revealed, whatever the cost. The race against time had begun, and Arthur was ready to face any obstacle. Without losing a second, Arthur ended the call with his lawyer, who promised maximum agility in obtaining the court order. His security detail, already alerted, was on its way, mobilizing vehicles and equipment. Corvus, still on his shoulder, seemed to sense the urgency of the moment, his black eyes fixed on Arthur's face, like a silent guide. The billionaire quickly changed out of his sleepwear into something more practical, jeans and a dark jacket, feeling adrenaline course through his veins. Every movement was precise, every thought focused on Luna. He grabbed his car keys, his heart beating a frantic rhythm of hope and dread. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Isabella, phone still in hand, felt cold sweat trickle down her forehead. The voice of the man on the other end of the line, her accomplice in the charade, was cautious. "It's too risky, Isabella. Moving the girl now might draw attention." She gritted her teeth, fury and fear mingling in her chest. "I don't care about the risk. Arthur found out. He's coming. If he finds Luna there, we're lost. Move her to the secondary hideout, the one in the old mill. No one would ever think to look there. And do it fast, or I swear you'll regret it." Her voice, once so melodious, was now a cruel hiss, revealing the true face behind the mask of a devoted wife. She hung up, her fingers trembling, and ran to the window, watching Arthur's car speed down the driveway, disappearing into the night's darkness. A chill ran down her spine. Arthur, with Corvus perched on the passenger seat, sped down the road, leaving the city lights behind. Sunrise Farm was a few hours away, in an isolated rural area, surrounded by fields and dense forests. With each kilometre driven, the urban landscape gave way to a more rustic and desolate scenery. Arthur felt the weight of responsibility and the searing pain of betrayal. How could he have been so blind? Memories of Luna, her crystalline laughter, her tight hugs, flooded his mind, propelling him forward. Corvus, every now and then, let out a soft caw, as if to remind him of his presence and their mission. The night was dark and fog began to form, making visibility difficult. Arthur gripped the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road, but his mind was on Luna. He imagined what she might have gone through, the fear, the loneliness. The idea that his own wife was responsible for such cruelty was a blow he could barely endure. The car rattled on the dirt roads, and the farm lights still didn't appear on the horizon. Suddenly, Corvus flapped his wings, flying to the car's dashboard and frantically pecking the windshield. Arthur followed the raven's gaze and saw, in the distance, a faint light flickering among the trees. It was a car light, moving quickly on a secondary road that, according to the map he had consulted, led directly to Sunrise Farm. A premonition chilled his blood. Isabella had acted. She was trying to move Luna. Arthur slammed his foot on the accelerator, the engine roaring in protest. "No, Isabella, you won't succeed," he murmured, his voice laden with a dark promise. His eyes, once tear-filled with pain, now burned with fierce determination. The distant light was a beacon, a challenge. He wouldn't allow Luna to disappear again. The race against time had become a desperate chase, and Arthur was ready for anything to rescue his daughter, whatever the cost. Arthur slammed his foot on the accelerator, the engine roaring on the uneven roads. The distant light danced ahead, a beacon of hope and despair. Corvus on the dashboard, his black eyes catching every detail of the darkness. The fog thickened, turning trees into silhouettes. Arthur felt his heart pound, a mix of fear and fury. He couldn't fail. Luna depended on him. The idea of her being taken again was unbearable. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Isabella paced back and forth, nervous footsteps echoing in the silence. The phone in her hand felt like a lead weight. She had given the order, but the weight was torture. Every minute increased the risk. She imagined Arthur unraveling her plan. A shiver ran down her spine. Fortune, luxury, everything she coveted hung by a thread. She needed the girl moved, fast. The old mill, forgotten and decrepit, was the perfect hideout. Arthur finally reached the secondary road. The light he was chasing wasn't a car, it was a farmer's lantern, his bent silhouette disappearing. A cold shower. Disappointment hit him hard. "No, it can't be," he murmured. Had he been mistaken? Had Isabella been faster? Corvus, sensing Arthur's discouragement, flew to his shoulder, pecking gently. With a low caw, he pointed to an almost invisible dirt trail, veering off the main road and plunging into the woods. Arthur stopped the car, his heart racing. That trail wasn't on the map. It was narrow, barely trodden, and seemed to lead nowhere. But Corvus's gaze was insistent. "What is it, Corvus?" Arthur asked, his voice hoarse. The raven cawed again, flying to the front of the trail and landing on a low branch, looking at Arthur as if urging him on. Hope, which had faded, rekindled, weak but persistent. He would trust the raven. He had to trust it. With a sigh of determination, Arthur turned the wheel, maneuvering the car with difficulty down the trail. Branches scraped the bodywork, the darkness almost total, but Corvus continued ahead, flying from branch to branch like a shadowy guide. After minutes that felt like an eternity, The trail opened into a clearing. In the center, an old, dilapidated structure rose against the night sky. An old windmill, its blades broken and rusted, looking like a giant skeleton. Arthur felt a chill. The mill. He vaguely remembered an old conversation, Isabella mentioning an old mill on a property adjacent to Sunrise Farm, an area she had inherited. This was it, the secondary hideout, the unexpected turning point. Isabella hadn't taken Luna to the main farm, but to this forgotten place, believing he would never find her. "Corvus, you're a genius," Arthur whispered, his voice choked. He got out of the car, the cold night air hitting him. The mill looked abandoned for decades, its stone walls covered in ivy, its windows dark like empty eyes. But as he approached, Arthur noticed a faint light coming from a small crack at the base of the structure. Luna was there. He could feel it. The race against time had reached its unexpected climax, and Arthur was ready to face whatever awaited him to bring his daughter back. Arthur approached the old mill, each step echoing in his chest, a mix of hope and icy fear. The faint light escaping from the crack at the base of the structure was a beacon, confirming Luna was there. He felt his muscles tense, his breath held. Corvus. On his shoulder, cawed and pecked his ear, a silent encouragement. The old wooden door creaked under his touch. It wasn't locked. With a gentle push, it opened, revealing a dark, dusty interior, lit by the flickering flame of a kerosene lamp. The smell of mold and abandonment was strong. His eyes swept the small room. In the corner, huddled on a thin mattress, was a tiny figure. Luna. The name barely left Arthur's lips, a choked whisper. The girl, thin and pale, with tangled hair and a dirty face, slowly raised her head. Her large eyes, once full of sparkle, now held sadness and fear. She stared at him, not recognizing him immediately, her expression blank. Arthur knelt on the cold floor, extending a trembling hand. "Luna, my daughter, it's me, Daddy." His voice trembled, laden with pain and love. Luna blinked, and a flicker of recognition lit up her eyes. A tear rolled down her cheek, and a faint sob escaped her lips. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. She tried to move, but seemed weak. Arthur moved forward, embracing her carefully, feeling the fragility of her tiny body. He held her close, warm tears streaming down his face. "Yes, my love. Daddy's here. I found you. You're safe now." Corvus flew from Arthur's shoulder and landed on the floor, looking at the door that led to an adjacent room. From there, a man emerged, Isabella's accomplice, his face pale and shocked. He hadn't expected Arthur, his eyes wide with fear fixed on the father and daughter, then on the raven. Without a word, the man turned abruptly and fled through the back door of the mill, disappearing into the night's darkness. Arthur's presence and the exposed truth deeply intimidated him. Arthur didn't even look at the fleeing man. His world was reduced to Luna, to the warmth of her small body. He pulled her back slightly to look into her eyes, wiping her tears. "You're safe now, my angel. No one will hurt you again, I promise." Luna, still trembling slightly, nestled closer, her face hidden in her father's shoulder, seeking refuge. The relief was immense, but the sight of his daughter so traumatized ignited a flame of cold fury in Arthur. Isabella would pay for this. He picked her up, feeling the light weight of her body, and left the mill, Corvus flying ahead. As guide and protector, the fresh night air felt like a balm of freedom. As Arthur headed to the car, with Luna safe in his arms, the luxury mansion was plunged into tense silence. Isabella, biting her nails, tried to call her accomplice, but the call wouldn't connect. Despair tightened her chest. She had failed. Arthur would find her. The image of her perfect life crumbling was a torment. Panic turned into desperate, impotent rage. She couldn't let Arthur win. Arthur carefully placed Luna in the back seat of the car, covering her with his jacket. Corvus landed on the seat back, watching the girl with tenderness. "We're going home, my love." Arthur promised, his voice soft. "We'll take care of you, and you'll never be alone again. Never again." Luna, exhausted and in shock, closed her eyes, but held her father's hand tightly, a small gesture worth more than 1,000 words. Arthur started the car, feeling new strength propel him. Justice would be served, and Isabella would face the consequences of her cruelty. But, at that moment, the priority was Luna, her recovery, and the rebuilding of a life that Isabella's betrayal had almost destroyed. The journey back would be the beginning of a new path, of healing, of unwavering love, and of a future where the truth, revealed by a brave raven, would finally triumph. The drive back to the mansion was a silence filled with intense emotions. Luna, nestled in the back seat, her head resting on Arthur's jacket, slept an restless sleep, punctuated by small sighs. Arthur drove with heightened caution, as if the car carried the world's most fragile and precious treasure. Every now and then he glanced in the rearview mirror, observing his daughter's pale face, and his heart tightened in his chest. The joy of having her back was immense, but the pain of seeing her so fragile was a constant blow. Corvus, perched on the passenger seat back, remained silent, his black eyes fixed on Luna, a vigilant sentinel. His presence was a silent comfort, a reminder that hope had prevailed. Arthur felt tears silently stream down his face, not from sadness, but from overwhelming relief and contained fury. He had failed to protect her, but now he would do everything to make up for it. The image of Isabella, with her mask of falsehood, burned in his mind. She would pay for every tear, for every moment of terror Luna had endured. Justice would be relentless. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Isabella paced back and forth in the living room, her nerves frayed. The phone in her hand was a useless object. The accomplice wasn't answering. She had tried to call him dozens of times, but the silence on the other end of the line was a more eloquent answer than any words. He had fled, abandoning her to her fate. The luxury around her, once her refuge and reward, now seemed like a gilded cage about to crumble. Her eyes swept the room, searching for a plan, an escape route, but panic paralyzed her. The lies she had woven so masterfully were unraveling, and she found herself naked before the truth Arthur was about to expose. Cold sweat trickled down her forehead, and she felt the air leave her lungs. The life she had dreamed of, the fortune she coveted, everything was slipping through her fingers. Finally, the mansion lights appeared on the horizon. Arthur felt a lump in his throat. He had promised Luna he would take her home, and there they were. He parked the car in front of the main door, and even before turning off the engine, his security detail, already mobilized, approached. Their faces, once worried, now showed a mix of relief and surprise upon seeing Luna asleep in the back seat. With extreme care, Arthur opened the door and picked Luna up in his arms. She was so light, so fragile. Her tangled hair and dirty face did not diminish his daughter's beauty in the slightest. Corvus flew from the car and landed on Arthur's shoulder, his eyes gleaming with silent satisfaction. "Call a doctor, immediately," Arthur instructed one of the security guards, his voice hoarse with emotion, "and prepare a warm, comfortable room for Luna. She needs rest and care." Upon entering the mansion, the tense silence was broken only by the hurried footsteps of the staff. Isabella, who had hidden in the shadows, watched the scene from afar, her heart beating wildly. Arthur, with Luna in his arms and Corvus on his shoulder, seemed like a force of nature, a father who had recovered his treasure and was ready for battle. Their eyes met for a brief instant, and Arthur's gaze was cuttingly cold, a promise that there would be no forgiveness. Arthur took Luna directly to the mansion's coziest room, one that had been hers before her disappearance. With the help of one of the oldest maids, a grey-haired woman named Donna Clara, who cried with emotion upon seeing the girl. He laid her on the soft bed. The doctor arrived minutes later, examining Luna gently. "She's dehydrated and exhausted, Arthur, but there are no serious injuries. The emotional trauma is the most concerning," the doctor explained, his voice soft. Arthur nodded, holding Luna's small hand, which, even in sleep, squeezed his fingers. While the doctor cared for Luna, Arthur stepped away for a moment. He needed to act. The truth had been revealed. Luna was safe, but the journey of justice was just beginning. He picked up the phone, his fingers firm. "Lawyer, I need you to come to the mansion immediately and call the police. I have a story to tell, and it starts with my wife, Isabella." Arthur's voice was calm, but laden with unshakable determination. The night would be long, and the truth finally would be exposed to the world. Arthur, phone still in hand, felt the weight of that moment. The truth, however painful, needed to come to light. His eyes, once tear-filled with Luna's pain, now gleamed with cold determination. He returned to his daughter's room, where the doctor still supervised her restless sleep. He sat on the edge of the bed, watching Luna's tiny chest rise and fall gently. Donna Clara, who had cared for Luna since she was a baby, wiped away tears in a corner, her face marked by anguish and relief. Corvus, faithful, landed on the headboard of the bed, his black eyes fixed on the girl like a silent guardian. Arthur caressed Luna's hand, feeling the fragility of her skin. He had promised to protect her, and now that promise would extend to her recovery and to ensuring that Isabella would never hurt anyone again. Justice would not only be for Isabella, but for Luna, so she could smile again without fear. Meanwhile, in the depths of the mansion, Isabella was in a state of absolute panic. Hidden in her luxurious room, she heard the hurried footsteps of the staff, the low voices, and knew the net was closing in. The mirror in front of her reflected a woman disfigured by fear, her eyes wide, her lipstick smudged. She tried again to call her accomplice, but the phone kept ringing, busy or out of service. He had abandoned her. The realization hit her with a heavy thud. There was nowhere to run, no one to help her. The fortune, the power, the luxurious life she had planned so meticulously, everything was crumbling like a house of cards. A hysterical laugh escaped her lips, quickly stifled by a sob. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palm. No, she couldn't lose everything, not like this. But what to do? Despair was a wave that swallowed her, and she felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. It wasn't long before the blue and red lights of the police began to flash on the mansion's driveway. Arthur's lawyer, Dr. Almeida, arrived almost simultaneously, his face grave and professional. The house, once a sanctuary of luxury and secrets, transformed into a stage of revelations. Arthur, with surprising calm, left Luna in the care of Donna Clara and the doctor, and went down to the main living room. He found Dr. Almeida and the detectives, who awaited him with serious expressions. Corvus followed him, silently landing on the chandelier in the room. Observing the scene with his peculiar intelligence, Arthur began to narrate the events, his voice firm, detailing the pain of Luna's supposed loss, Corvus's strange behavior, the shocking words the raven uttered, the discovery of the hideout in the mill, and Isabella's cruelty. Every word was a blow to the facade of normalcy the mansion had maintained for so long. The detectives listened attentively, taking notes. Dr. Almeida, beside Arthur, intervened with specific questions, ensuring all details were legally soundly recorded. The story of a talking raven seemed unbelievable, but Arthur's seriousness, the evidence of the rescued girl, and the accomplice's flight lent weight to the narrative. When Arthur finished, the silence in the room was heavy. One of the detectives turned to his colleagues. "We need to locate Mrs. Isabella immediately." At that moment, Isabella, who had tried to hide in a downstairs service room, was found by one of Arthur's security guards. Her eyes met Arthur's for a brief instant, and the panic on her face was palpable. She tried to speak, to stammer an excuse, but the words died in her throat. The detectives approached her, and one of their voices sounded clear and formal. "Mrs. Isabella, we have some questions to ask about Luna's disappearance. Please come with us." Isabella was led away, her steps dragging, her head bowed. The mask of a devoted wife had completely fallen, revealing the cold, calculating woman she truly was. Arthur watched the scene without triumph, only with a deep sense of exhaustion and sadness. Justice was beginning to be served, but the path to Luna's healing would be long and delicate. He knew the girl would need all the love and patience in the world to overcome the trauma. Corvus flew from the chandelier and landed back on his shoulder, gently pecking his ear, as if offering silent solace. Arthur closed his eyes for an instant, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, but also the lightness of the truth finally exposed. The night was still long, but the darkness was beginning to give way to a faint light of hope, guided by a father's unwavering love and the courage of a small raven. Arthur remained there, the silence of the room echoing Isabella's departure. Corvus, on his shoulder, let out a soft caw, a bond of understanding. Exhaustion weighed heavily, but the image of Luna, safe in her bed, was his anchor. He climbed the stairs, each step a reminder of the long journey. In Luna's room, Donna Clara sat by the bed, stroking the girl's hair. The doctor had already left, leaving care instructions. A lamp cast soft light on Luna's sleeping face, which looked like an angel, despite the suffering. Arthur sat in the armchair holding Luna's small hand. She squeezed it, even in deep sleep, an unconscious gesture of security. Donna Clara smiled, her eyes moist. "She's sleeping. Rest and affection are the most important." Arthur nodded, his throat tight. He watched Luna, absorbing the reality of having her back. The pain of her absence was an abyss, and now the relief bordered on vertigo. Corvus flew to Arthur's chest, nestling in, sharing his burden and joy. As the mansion quieted, Isabella, at the police station, faced relentless interrogation. Her arrogance dissolved into despair and rage. She denied, invented lies, but the evidence and Arthur's testimony, supported by Corvus's revelations, were irrefutable. The web of deceit unraveled, and she felt the weight of the law and social repulsion. The coveted fortune seemed a distant mirage. Back in Luna's room, Arthur felt a warmth in his chest, unconditional love for his daughter. He knew Luna's recovery would be long and delicate. There would be nightmares, fears, silences, but he would be there, every step of the way, promising that Luna would feel safe, loved, free to be the happy child she was before Isabella stole her innocence. Corvus gently pecked his shirt. Arthur smiled, weak but genuine. "You saved us, my friend," he whispered. "You saved Luna. You saved me." The raven cawed, and Arthur felt a deep connection. He was more than an animal, an unlikely hero who had brought light to the darkness. The following days were dedicated to Luna. Arthur cancelled commitments, delegating everything. His world revolved around his daughter. He spent hours by her side, reading, singing, or just holding her hand. Luna, little by little, showed improvement. Her eyes, once empty, regained their sparkle. She smiled shyly. Her small, still, fragile hugs were a balm for Arthur. The mansion, once cold, filled with a new warmth. In that of a reunited family, of healing and hope. Donna Clara and the staff showered them with affection. The news of Isabella's arrest and the truth shocked society. Arthur, however, stayed out of the spotlight, protecting Luna. Justice would take its course, and Isabella would face the consequences. For Arthur, the victory was seeing Luna flourish again, a reminder that love, truth, and perseverance triumph, even in the darkest adversities. The days following Isabella's arrest were a whirlwind of emotions and actions for Arthur, but also a period of profound renewal. The mansion, once a stage of dissimulation and silent pain, now breathed an air of hope and new beginnings, though it still bore the scars of the recent past. Luna, with her father's constant presence and Donna Clara's unconditional affection, began to blossom again, like a delicate flower returning to life after a storm. Her smiles, once rare and forced, became more frequent, illuminating the rooms with a light Arthur thought he had lost forever. She still had nightmares, waking up startled some nights, but Arthur was always there, holding her hand firmly, singing soft lullabies until sleep carried her back to a place of peace and safety. Corvus, in turn, was a silent and vigilant guardian, often perched on Luna's bedroom window, watching her with his intelligent and protective eyes, as if ensuring no harm would reach her again. Justice, as Arthur had promised with a broken heart, was acting relentlessly. Isabella, in her cold and desolate cell, watched her world of luxury and power crumble before her eyes. Dr. Almeida, with the tireless help of the detectives, gathered irrefutable evidence that sealed her fate. Bank records showing suspicious transfers to the accomplice, the moving testimonies of employees who noticed her strange and manipulative behavior, and of course, Arthur's emotional and unquestionable testimony, supported by the living and traumatized evidence of Luna. The accomplice, after being captured and confronted with the evidence, confessed everything in exchange for a lesser sentence, confirming Isabella's relentless greed and calculating cruelty. The media, which had previously speculated about the billionaire's daughter's mysterious disappearance, now ran shocking headlines about the heinous betrayal and the stepmother's charade. Isabella's reputation was destroyed beyond recovery, and society, once dazzled by her superficial charm, now viewed her with deep repulsion and contempt. In court, Isabella tried to maintain her haughty and dissembling demeanor, but her voice failed. Her lies were transparent and crumbled under the weight of the truth. Arthur, sitting in the front row, watched her without hatred, only with a deep sadness and exhaustion for what she had become and the harm she had caused. The verdict came swiftly and decisively, a final blow: guilty. The sentence was severe and just, reflecting the gravity of her actions and the unspeakable trauma inflicted on an innocent child. Isabella was sentenced to a long prison term, losing not only her freedom, but also access to Arthur's vast fortune and any remnants of her former life of ostentation. She, who had so coveted money and power, now had nothing but the overwhelming weight of her nefarious choices and the solitude of her own wickedness. For Arthur, Isabella's conviction brought not a feeling of revenge, but rather a painful yet necessary closure. Justice had been served, and now he could fully focus on Luna's future, on her full recovery. He knew that money wouldn't buy happiness or erase painful memories, but it could provide Luna with the best psychological help, the best treatment, and all the unconditional love and support she needed to rebuild herself and flourish again. They began to spend more time outside the mansion, in sunny parks, blooming gardens, allowing Luna to rediscover the joy of simple things and the beauty of the world around her. Corvus always accompanied them, flying freely through the blue sky, but never too far, like a protective shadow. One day, as Arthur and Luna played in the garden, picking wildflowers, she stopped, looked at the raven perched majestically on a nearby branch, and a genuine, radiant smile, coming from the depths of her soul, lit up her pale face. "Corvus saved me, Daddy," she said, her voice still a little shy, but full of deep and sincere gratitude. Arthur hugged her tightly, feeling the warmth and fragility of her small body against his. "Yes, my love, he saved us. He is our guardian angel, a gift from heaven." In that moment, Arthur realized that true wealth was not in his vast fortune, but in the unconditional love he shared with Luna and the unwavering loyalty of a winged friend. Life, though marked by pain and betrayal, was rebuilding itself, stronger, truer, and more meaningful than ever. The path to healing was long, but they were not alone. Human connection, Corvus's altruism, and the unbreakable strength of family were the pillars of their new and promising beginning. Arthur held Luna tightly in his arms, feeling her small body tremble slightly, not from fear, but from deep emotion. That smile, that phrase, was the sweetest melody. "Yes, my love," he repeated, his voice choked. "He saved us. He is our guardian angel." In that instant, his vast fortune seemed insignificant. True wealth was there in that embrace, in the scent of Luna's hair, in the beat of her heart. The following months were a testament to human resilience and unconditional love. Luna, with specialized therapists and Arthur's tireless dedication, began to untangle the knots of trauma. The sessions were a safe harbor for expressing fears and painful memories. Arthur was always present, listening, validating, assuring her that she would never be alone again. He read to her every night, told her stories, and watched the sparkle return to his daughter's eyes. Corvus, the winged hero, remained a constant and comforting presence. He would wait for Luna to return from school, landing on her shoulder as she recounted her day. He accompanied her in her drawings, gently pecking the pencil when she seemed frustrated. The connection between them was magical, a bond of gratitude and affection that transcended words. For Luna, Corvus was living proof that truth always finds a way and that kindness exists. The mansion, once a place of shadows, transformed into a vibrant and welcoming home. Children's laughter echoed through the corridors, and the smell of freshly baked cookies made by Donna Clara and Luna filled the kitchen. Arthur redecorated Luna's room, a sanctuary of cheerful colors and toys, a space to dream and play without fear. He also allowed himself to heal. The guilt for not having perceived Isabella's malice was replaced by gratitude and the determination to be the best father. Isabella, in turn, served her sentence, isolated from the world she so coveted. Her name, once synonymous with glamour, now associated with betrayal and cruelty. Arthur didn't think of her with anger, but with distant sadness, lamenting the life she had chosen. Her absence was a relief, a space that allowed light and love to fill every corner of Arthur and Luna's lives. Luna, a year later, was unrecognizable. Her hair, once tangled, now shone in the sun. Her eyes, once full of apprehension, radiated confidence and joy. She had returned to school, made new friends, and even ventured into small children's theater performances, a talent Arthur didn't know she possessed. One sunny afternoon, as they walked through the garden, Luna held Arthur's hand tightly. "Daddy," she said, her voice clear and sweet, "I'm not afraid anymore." Arthur knelt, embracing her with all the love his heart could hold. Corvus landed on his shoulder, observing the scene with his wise eyes. That moment, that phrase, was the true resolution. It wasn't just the absence of fear, but the vibrant presence of hope, joy, and the certainty that, together, they could face any adversity. The family, rebuilt on truth and unwavering love, was stronger than ever. The journey was arduous, but overcoming it brought beauty and meaning that transformed their lives forever. That embrace in the garden, under Corvus's wise gaze, sealed not only Luna's healing, but Arthur's as well. The phrase, "I'm not afraid anymore," echoed in the billionaire's soul, like the most beautiful of symphonies, a testament to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. The years that followed were filled with a serenity Arthur had never imagined possible. The mansion, once a monument to his grief and Isabella's charade, transformed into a vibrant home where Luna's joy was the constant melody. Luna grew up, not forgetting the past, but transcending it. The emotional scars became marks of her resilience, and her empathy blossomed. Making her a young woman with a generous heart, she dedicated herself to social causes, especially those protecting vulnerable children, inspired by her own journey. Arthur, with immense pride, supported every initiative, seeing in his daughter the embodiment of all that was good and just in the world. He had learned that true fortune was the legacy of love and kindness they would leave behind. Corvus, the winged hero, remained by their side, an irreplaceable member of the family. His calls, once a desperate warning, were now a sound of companionship and peace. He flew freely through the vast gardens, but always returned, landing on Luna's shoulder as she read, or on Arthur's arm during his moments of reflection. The story of the raven that spoke and saved a life spread, making him a local legend, a symbol that truth, however hidden, always finds its herald. Donna Clara, the loyal maid, continued to be a pillar of affection and wisdom, a grandmother to Luna and a confidant to Arthur. Her constant presence was a reminder of the kindness that exists in simple people, a counterpoint to the cruelty they had faced. Together, they formed a family, not of blood, but of bonds forged in adversity and cemented by love. Isabella, in turn, remained in prison, her existence a distant shadow, a reminder of the darkness that greed can generate. Arthur rarely thought of her, and when he did, it was with a melancholic compassion for the lost soul she had become. Justice had been served, not as revenge, but as the restoration of order, allowing light to shine again. Luna, now a young adult, was about to start college with plans to study child psychology. In her graduation speech, before an emotional audience, she spoke about the importance of never giving up, of seeking truth, and of valuing the bonds that connect us. "My father and Corvus taught me that love is the most powerful force in the universe," she said, her eyes meeting Arthur's, who smiled with tears in his eyes. "And that family, whatever form it takes, is our safe harbor." Arthur felt his heart overflow. That was the true triumph, not the rescue itself, but the life Luna had rebuilt, the strong and compassionate woman she had become. He looked at Corvus, who was perched on the auditorium windowsill, as always, watching. The raven cawed softly, as if agreeing. The story of Arthur and Luna, and of Corvus the raven, became a beacon of hope. Proof that, even in the depths of betrayal and suffering, unconditional love, revealed truth, and the courage of a pure heart can overcome the darkest adversities. They proved that life, when lived with purpose and gratitude, can be a journey of healing and a glorious new beginning, where human connection and altruism are the greatest treasures. And so, the mansion, once a stage of secrets, became a sanctuary of love and an eternal testament to the indomitable strength of family. The mansion, once a stage of secrets, became a sanctuary of love and an eternal testament to the indomitable strength of family. The years following Luna's graduation only solidified this truth. Life, with its twists and challenges, continued to weave its tapestry, but now each thread was dyed with the colors of hope and gratitude. Luna, with her degree in child psychology, plunged headfirst into her passion. She opened a support center for children who had suffered trauma, a safe place where small wounded hearts could find solace and hope. Her eyes, which once carried the shadow of fear, now radiated deep compassion, a reflection of her own journey of overcoming. Arthur, watching her, felt his chest swell with a pride no fortune could buy. He dedicated a large part of his resources and influence to support Luna's work, seeing each child helped as a small miracle, an echo of his daughter's own healing. Corvus, the winged guardian, aged gracefully, his feathers still gleaming, his eyes wise and penetrating. He continued to be a constant presence in Arthur and Luna's lives. Often he was found perched on the window of Luna's center, watching the children play and heal, as if still guarding against any harm reaching them. At night he would return to the mansion, landing on Arthur's shoulder as they read together, or nestling close to Luna as she reviewed her cases. His presence was a silent reminder that truth, however difficult, always found a way, and that bonds of love and loyalty could emerge from the most unexpected sources. Donna Clara, with her now silver hair, continued to be the soul of the mansion, a loving grandmother to Luna and a loyal friend to Arthur. Her stories and affection were a balm, keeping alive the flame of simplicity and kindness amidst opulence. The house, once cold and silent, was now filled with the buzz of life, laughter of children visiting Luna, the aroma of freshly baked cookies, and the soft melody of conversations full of affection. Isabella, the name that once caused so much pain, became a distant memory, a shadow that dissolved with the light of time and justice. Her absence was a space filled by the fullness and peace that Arthur and Luna had built. Life had taught them that true wealth was not in material possessions, but in the integrity of character, the strength of family love, and the ability to transform pain into purpose. On a sunny, late afternoon, Arthur and Luna walked through the mansion garden, Corvus flying in circles above them. Luna, now a strong and independent woman, held her father's hand. "You know, Daddy," she said, her voice mature and serene, "sometimes the greatest adversities show us who we truly are and what truly matters." Arthur squeezed her hand, his eyes moist with deep joy. "Yes, my love, and they teach us that love. Truth and human connection are the greatest treasures we can have." Corvus gently landed on Arthur's shoulder, cawing in approval. That sound, once a cry of warning, was now a song of triumph. The family, forged in pain and rebuilt with love, was a beacon, living proof that with courage and an open heart, life always finds a way to flourish again, more beautiful and meaningful than ever.